What if Rhaenyra's biggest mistake this season is not a dragon battle, not a military failure, and not even one of her enemies at all, but the way she handles the one man who helped put her on the throne in the first place? Because after this episode, I genuinely think the quiet tension between Rhaenyra and Corlys may become one of the most dangerous fault lines in the entire war. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Breakdown Epic. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Now, this episode gives us a moment that looks small on the surface, almost like a private family political disagreement at dinner, but in my opinion, it may end up being one of the most important turning points in Rhaenyra's entire reign. Corlys finally does something he has held back from doing for years. He openly pushes for Aemond and Aelin to be recognized in a way that actually gives them weight, status, and a future under the Velaryon name. And what makes that moment hit so hard is not just what he is asking for, it is everything he has already lost before asking. This is a man who gave his fleet, his strength, his family, and almost his own life to Rhaenyra's cause. He buried too much for that crown. So when he asks for something in return, even if he does not phrase it as a demand, you can feel how overdue it is. And that is exactly why Rhaenyra's response matters so much. She does not clearly say yes. She does not fully deny him either. But politically, hesitation at a moment like that is its own answer. And I think Corlys understands that immediately. Because this is not really about paperwork. It is about whether Rhaenyra is willing to spend a little bit of pride in exchange for keeping one of her most valuable allies emotionally and politically close. And in that moment, she flinches. Now, to be fair to her, she is not hesitating for no reason. The issue is bigger than Aemond and Aelin alone. If she publicly grants them full legitimacy, then she opens the door to the exact kind of scrutiny she cannot afford. People will ask questions about blood, lineage, inheritance, and if those questions get loud enough, they land directly on her own children. That is why the scene is so good, because both people are right in completely different ways. Corlys is right to feel owed. Rhaenyra is right to see the political danger. But when two people are both right and still cannot move toward each other, that is where tragedy starts growing. And honestly, that is why I think this scene matters more than some of the louder moments around it. We are watching Rhaenyra choose the stability of her image over the emotional loyalty of one of her strongest supporters. And this show has already taught us what happens when rulers start making that exact trade. Now, let me rewind for a second, because what makes this even sharper is the history underneath it. Corlys stayed loyal, while other men would have broken. He accepted things that, from the outside, should have been impossible for a man of his standing to accept. He watched the question of lineage bend and twist around him. He swallowed public discomfort. He carried political contradictions. And he did all of it because, at some level, the alliance still meant something bigger than personal resentment. That is why this dinner scene lands like a crack instead of a fight. It is not sudden, it is cumulative. It is years of silence finally reaching the point where silence stops working. In my opinion, the most dangerous line in this whole storyline is not what anyone shouts. It is the unspoken question underneath all of it. How much more is Corlys expected to lose before he gets something real back? Because if the answer is more, then Rhaenyra is making a catastrophic miscalculation. Now, let's talk about why this matters strategically, not just emotionally. Corlys is not simply another lord who can be replaced if he gets offended. He is one of the pillars holding Rhaenyra's rule together. His fleet matters, his men matter, his name matters, his survival matters, and perhaps most importantly, the people aligned with him matter. If he begins to emotionally detach from her, that does not just hurt the mood of the room, it weakens the structure of her reign. That is why I think this scene may be the start of something far worse than one bruised alliance. It may be the first moment where Corlys starts realizing that Rhaenyra, now that she has the throne, may ask for endless loyalty while giving less and less in return. And that is exactly the kind of realization that turns unwavering support into dangerous distance.
Now, what if this is the point where House of the Dragon quietly starts shifting Corlys from great ally to future complication? I am not saying he suddenly flips sides tomorrow. That would be too easy and honestly too cheap. But emotional withdrawal is enough. Doubt is enough. Hesitation is enough. A man does not have to betray you dramatically to stop being yours. Sometimes all he has to do is stop sacrificing first. And in a war this fragile, that is more than enough to change everything. Now let's bring in Aegon and Aelin themselves, because they matter in a different but equally important way. They are not just passive names in this argument. They represent delayed legitimacy. They represent the people who fight, bleed, and prove themselves, while still being reminded that their place can be withheld for political convenience. That makes them emotionally loaded figures in a world obsessed with names and blood. And if Rhaenyra continues handling them through caution rather than conviction, she may end up alienating more than just Corlys. She may end up teaching people with real power that service does not guarantee respect. That is a lesson rulers in this world should never want their allies to learn. Personally, I think that is what makes this episode so smart. It's not just showing a queen under pressure.
It is showing the early signs of what kind of queen pressure may turn her into. The woman who once seemed pushed by grief and legitimacy now has the throne, and with that comes a harder question. Does power make her more careful or more suspicious? More generous or more guarded? This scene suggests guarded, and guarded rulers in Westeros do not stay stable for long. Now, I want to do a quick contrast because I think it sharpens the whole issue. On one side, you have Corlys, a man defined by what he has already given up. On the other side, you have Rhaenyra, a ruler defined by what she still feels she must protect at all costs. One is asking for recognition rooted in sacrifice. The other is refusing clarity because recognition could endanger perception. That is not just political disagreement. That is incompatible emotional logic. And when those two logics collide inside a war, the consequences spread fast. Now, here is my locked prediction. I think this scene becomes much more important in hindsight than it feels in the moment. Not because Corlys does something dramatic right away, but because from this point forward, every later fracture in Rhaenyra's support system will feel easier to understand. If loyalty is not fed, it thins. If sacrifice is not respected, it curdles. And if a queen keeps choosing image over those who bled for her, eventually she will look around and realize the throne is still there, but the people who put her on it are not standing as close anymore.
That is the danger here, not immediate betrayal, erosion. And erosion is often much harder to fix. Before I finish, let me give you the fast-fire version of why this scene matters. Corlys has already given too much to be brushed aside lightly. Rhaenyra's hesitation is politically understandable, but emotionally disastrous. Aegon and Aelin represent more than legitimacy. They represent whether service is actually honored. This is not a loud betrayal scene. It is a quiet fracture scene. And in a story like this, quiet fractures are often the ones that split the throne open later. So overall, I think this episode plants one of the most dangerous seeds in Rhaenyra's entire reign. She finally has the crown, but in trying to protect what it says about her, she risks weakening the very people who made it possible. And in Westeros, that kind of mistake does not stay small for long. But anyway, that is my breakdown of why the Corlys and Rhaenyra conflict in this episode may matter much more than it first appears. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, do you think this dinner scene is the real beginning of Corlys emotionally pulling away from Rhaenyra? Or do you think they can still repair this before it costs her the war? I will catch you in the next one.